Hello and welcome to the Pilot Review Show with Scott. I am Scott speaking here, and joining me together today is the co-host on the show here today is Timberwolf.
How's it going, guys?
And with us today we have a player submission here. It goes by Necreon.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you for joining our show and thank you for your submission. Definitely appreciate it. It actually gives us things to do and things to talk about.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. As a reminder to those out there that's listening and looking to get on help on your builds and your ships, all you need to do is just record, and you can get yourself some help. We'll look at your build. You can go to our site at pilotreviewshow.com, and in the top there you'll see submissions, and you'll be able to submit your build and drop it in there. You can use a ton of different programs. You can use what we're using here, which is the Google Hangouts through YouTube, which is a non-installation type application so that you can not have to install anything on your computer to do things. It's a great way, and you can point it to your screen that you need to point it to. So that's one way that you can do to record your screens. If you want to give this out to people as a true method. So Necreon here, question for you. What are you trying to do with your ship?
So I was trying to set up a dual beam bank biomolecular procking setup, which focused primarily on the forward 90-degree arc.
Okay. So you're using the Avenger, the Fleet Avenger?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Give me a second. Go away. Sorry about that. Twitch decided I wanted to start playing advertisements even though it was muted. So, just so you people out there are known and aware, one thing that Necron has done is actually reached out to us, joined us in a TeamSpeak channel. This is what, Tuesday, I think it was? And
yeah.
So we had a discussion with him then about his ship. We went over his video at that time with him privately to kind of give him some advanced information on things. That's an option that's totally available to anyone that's looking to do it, and especially in the case that you may not be on the show. If you got to be doing something else, that's one way you can still get the one-on-one interaction, or is ways so you can be doubly prepared and ready to really know what's going to happen when you get on the show with us. We definitely want to help you out in any way we can. So without further ado here, let's go ahead and start his video here. It looks like he's doing Infected Space Advanced, which has changed, by the way. I should point this out. At least give us some sound here on this, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll try not to be a downer, but basically it's been slightly dumbed down as of today's patch, and what I mean by that is it was something that was talked about on the show. They've kind of nerfed it in the degree that it's going to be easier for the casual players to play for the advanced queue rewards, which does create, for some instances, a huge gap between advanced and elite. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially going forward as far as testing your damage and your hull and all that using any kind of parser, how the new changes are going to affect that.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that on that aspect. It's going to be different here. So this real quick, Necron, was this a pug or was this a preformed run here?
Yeah, this was just a pug.
Okay, so that explains why you didn't why no one's waiting basically on it.
Yep, they just charged right on in.
Yep, that happens. You kind of have to go with the flow. One thing that I might suggest is, you got the spear that's behind you. You might have been just fine to go in a little slower so that you can get a couple shots on him at least. I mean, he does come right in front of you right there asking for his own death. That could have been because of a gravity well that might have been launched there or something like that. But you got good position here. That's one of the things I do want to say. It's not like you're behind people at this point. Deuterium surplus. Glad you got those stocked up and ready.
Couldn't fly without them.
Yep. Especially in this ship where it's not exactly the fastest vehicle in the market. He is using Oxabat here. As DPS wise, Oxabat is not necessarily the best type of thing. It's still a very good method for PvP situations. Um, so that's one thing to be aware of. Um, it, as you level up, I don't see. Do you? Haven't seen anything yet. Do you have space flanking yet?
Not yet. I invested in the command tree, something for which I'm kind of regretting now.
Yeah, I mean it's not like it's a terrible tree. It's just for doing damage with beams. The intel tree is a lot better overall because it's got the space flanking and it only takes 10 levels to get the space flanking.
Mhm.
Well, to get to the space flanking, I should say. So when you start doing the intel, start. Um, you saw there that you were still focused on a farther enemy. But anyways, you started filling on the space side, and then you fill that up until it's done and ready to go. Um, start shooting on the gateway. Even though it may not be taking any damage, and it's still a DPS thing. You didn't really need to do the rock and roller, especially when you're just about to start your combat shooting, because your cycles on your weapons haven't necessarily started. I don't know if you accidentally hit it or something like that.
I think I was trying to use it for the speed boost it gives me.
Yeah. I mean, it's all right for the speed boost, but overall, when it comes down to it, if you can avoid it, especially where you weren't like it overly far from it, you should have also evasive. Looks like both of them were on cooldown, maybe evasive and the battery.
Yeah, they're both on cooldown, I think.
So, you know, it's definitely something to use. I would have probably used about midway in the gateway. And at midway in the gateway, you might have been just fine on that boost that it would have given you. Or just as you started flying past the gateway. That way you can get that extra little boost to get there a little faster. You're doing a lot of backup and reversing. It's going to push you further away from everything here. So just be mindful on that. Sometimes it is okay to simply sit still,
Absolutely.
especially when they're not moving a whole lot. Get the anchor trait and take advantage of the anchor trait because of that sitting still factor. Okay.
Okay.
Have you got the new point blank trait yet?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. Get yourself that within 6 kilometers of everything that you have, and you'll start seeing the damage spikes going up higher. 2 kilometers is ideal. Looks like you got someone behind you that's shooting on you and having a heyday. At this point here, where you got just the 3, you could have got a little bit closer and still been within range just enough of everything. That way, you could have been ready there. Now, you got a lot of every power that you have there is fully maxed out, which is awesome. That's what you want to be using. Do you have the a fleet core with amp on it, or is it something different?
Yeah, I've got the fleet core with amp.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure because you get full advantage of that. Unfortunately, with Oxabat, you lose one of the amps instantly.
Yeah.
You might do some adjustments on your power levels. You have to figure out what you need to do to adjust properly. Either dropping down shields and engines a little bit more so that Ox goes up a little bit higher, so you got a solid 75 on that. So you have to figure that out. That's one of the things that I can't give you the exact number that you need to be at for everything, because unfortunately it changes from ship to ship. You might have a little bit more science consoles that you throw into your build. You might have a little less than some other people use.
Yeah, I have my my power levels are in the description section of my profile.
So overall, you got pretty good positions. You'll be like once you get anchored and get that added to your arsenal of traits, you'll find yourself doing a little bit more damage, it's not too bad of a price for it. I think it's like what 3 million. I think if I recall right.
It was pretty cheap, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those. It's a very underrated trade as a whole. So here we have the final of 20k damage. So that's not bad. You can definitely do a lot more on this. So, you know, from discussing with you prior, you did change your weapons, correct?
Yeah, I did.
So instead of the biomolecular phasers, you're now on
Antiprotons.
antiprotons. Okay, and that's just fine. Antiprotons, like I said, they will get you because they got a little bit higher crit damage. As you get your crits have up, it'll get a lot more boost and beneficial from you. This is the build as of this video here. Obviously, like we said, he's had a chance to change it out and get some things a little bit differently than what he's using right now. This looks like a lot of things that I've done, honestly. Almost looks like Jonathan Holmes' build as well, one of his basic builds. But it's one of those things that isn't too bad. What I would have done probably instead of this heavy phaser turret here is get a omnidirectional disruptor beam or phaser beam in this case. In your case here, I would even recommend dropping the experimental proton and the turret here and getting the omnidirectional ancient beam and the crafted AP beam, so that you have basically you'll have 3 omnidirectional weapons in the aft.
Yeah, to give you an idea of what I was going for when I first set this up, since I was focusing on biomolecular weapons, I was using the turret to get the 2-piece proc with the console, which increases the phaser damage, and also gives you the increased chance at the biomolecular proc. And I was using the experimental proton beam with its console to give me the extra 3% crit chance.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, the biggest problem that it has is that you're throwing a turret in there that you're never going to buff up with your bridge officer skills, and it takes a lot more power to run those because you lose power when that's being run with other weapons. So that's one of the biggest problems that they have is some of those items like that. So, and that's one of those things just to be aware of and in the mind of. But everything here is overall isn't too bad. Of a setup for an aux to bat build, you got enough things to keep everything going. But for DPS, it is a DPS loss if you're looking to do more damage on everything that you do. But need that to go away. Why is it there? Anyways, so as part of the discussion here, for those who are listening to this, or watching, I should say, we gave them a new list of things to do. And this list actually comes from Spencer, who was on with us last week on the show. And this particular list still uses the phaser weapons. So this is kind of the biggest changes here is this changing to crafted phaser weapons. And it uses the full Iconian weapons or ship set, so using the deflector, engines, core, and shield, especially as an engineer where you don't have the tactical skills, so that you get the 33% from the 4-piece set. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit expensive. You want to, out of anything, at the very minimum, is getting this core up to amp. Give me 2 seconds real quick. I got a cat that's being really annoying right now.
Sure.
Okay, sorry about that. Children are letting animals in this room. I don't want to be in.
No problem.
So you see, the biggest difference here is change the engineer universal into a tactical universal,
Mhm.
because you get the SRO that you can get from Fleet Embassy that allows for a little bit more damage on that aspect. Plus, giving you that. I don't necessarily agree with the layout here, honestly, myself.
Mhm.
I probably would have done something like that. But I will put it out to you. You can do whatever you like. I like to have at least 2 beamfire at will so that I can be bouncing back and forth between the 2 of them at least.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I always like to have at least, if I have the spot for beamfire will 3, I try and always slot that because of how much it does.
Okay.
But that's really one of those things. It's up to you as far as what you are looking to do.
Mhm.
He's got in here a auxiliary power to structural integrity field, so that's will give you a good boost in heals and whatnot. It's definitely a worthwhile thing to do. Then you got obviously the immediate power weapons 3, which is a must-have when you can, so you can boost your weapons up to max. And then the direct energy module that you use, most likely you'll have a Marion set on this here, so that'll give you some damage resistance on, or not damage resistance, power drain resistance on that as well. The other biggest difference here is the science consoles. He's got 2 of the weapon nullifiers, which is the flow caps. Got those up to epic. Definitely a must do. They're cheap to get up. I think it's like 4 or 5 superior upgrade kits, and you got yourself 1 round at least of the after Mark 14 if it doesn't get to epic at that point. So it'll be a lot of it'll be a few rounds of that. You may get it up to 20% before it finally procs. You may get up to 50% before it procs. It just takes that time. Fortunately, they keep the things here. Now let's take a look at your skills as of this video, which I know has changed a little bit.
Just a bit.
Yeah, this is one of those that when we first looked at it, he has projectile weapons, and then the specialization over here, which on his particular build he was not even using torpedoes, which I imagine you did at one point.
Yeah, I did. Used to when I was flying a Excelsior refit.
Yeah, so and there's nothing wrong with torpedoes. Some people can make them very good as far as what they can do, but when you're not using them at all, it's hardly worth slotting the skills for. So obviously that gave you some ability to put things in other spots, and a lot of this is pretty darn good. You don't have anything that's at the 9s that would be kind of critical, like any of the performance enhancements for engines and for the warp core potential. But as we said, you've already gone through and you've changed some of this, so that I'm not going to focus too much on it. But for those who are at home, wherever you may be, I should say, these skills is not exactly like what you'd call a ideal for any given situation. It just happens to be a very rounded build. It's not exactly like what some people would do to do what we call min-maxing, which is where you're focusing on making the best of everything that you have. And you, as in this build here, you had 3,000 that was not towards space that you put towards ground, which could have easily dropped into your batteries. So just for those at home, that's some of the things you can do. As we talked about, you use the command tree. How far did you have that filled up anyways?
Let's take a look. I've got my command. I've got 16 points into command, and I've got 21 points into pilot.
Okay.
I've got 1 point in intelligence.
Yeah, it'll take a little while. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to go in. I'll be honest. Um, I have not since they expanded the pilot tree. I've not even gone like I think more than 2 or 3 points beyond what I had. I think I had like actually I might be 4 points beyond because I had 4 points that I had built up, but that was about it. Um, command trees,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with the command tree. It's just not ideal for. It's not one of the best things for a energy based weapons. Um, it's more for those who are trying to buff others nearby and around them, which you can do. But the best set and best situation to use command tree in is really going to be the command ships. Actually, those are where these skills really go on because I think one of them actually helps to boost the special that the command ships have.
Oh, okay.
So, if I recall right, I haven't dug into it very well because it's one of those things I didn't really care for. And then for the secondary pilot, which is, in my opinion, is a must-have for a secondary in almost any ship for PvE. PvP, you can probably get away with it as a primer, actually. So let's take a look at what Spencer actually jumping around a little bit. Sorry about that. Traits. The blank one here, you had something in there, didn't you?
Yeah, I believe that was a blade of shell.
Okay, which is right there. For whatever reason, it didn't. They haven't added the icons in here. These traits aren't exactly like the greatest around. They're not exactly the worst. There are worse things that you can put in there than what was there. But as a whole, very solid setup, very solid looks of things. Using a lot of heals. Nanite Cloud, if I recall right, Nanite Cloud was more of those that was for. Let's see. I thought it was something that.
That's the one that gives you a heal over time whenever you heal yourself or anybody else. And
Yeah,
it also does a heal over time around them.
Yeah, it's one of those that it helped out. It was more for like healing people around you and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why I didn't see it in the list here. Whatever. I mean, you definitely had a lot of heal in this ship as a whole. There's no doubt on that. Why do I keep hitting that when I'm trying to go over here? Jeez, it's one of those days. I will be honest.
Yeah, it's all good.
Eventually minded Fleet Avenger, blah blah blah, and 24%. So yeah, on a Fed or a KDF setup, you can actually get away with about 20% and be just fine for getting good DPS.
Okay, that was one of the things I was wondering: is when should I switch over to an exploiter instead of a locator?
I wouldn't switch over to exploiters at all. I would still keep it to the locators. 25% on a Feder and KDF is great at your setup that you have, but that's because of the proton setup. So when you drop that, you got yourself 3 that you're going to be going down to. So be at 21.9% at that, which is a great number. Actually, I think it's a little bit higher than that because it's a third SRO. So it'd be like 22, 23.
Yeah, let's see, 24% right now.
Is that with the?
That's with the third SRO.
With the third SRO and with the proton weapon on there.
No, I actually dropped the proton weapon entirely.
Okay, so you just lost 0.9% dropping the proton weapon altogether. Then.
Yeah, that third SRO really gave me a boost.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. And any ship I do, that especially once it's trying to aim for damage, I always try and get those in because you see, I mean, you drop the proton weapon and you added an SRO, which is a lot more beneficial to the build as a whole. And plus, it gives you some crit stuff as well at the same time. So that's some of the things. So do respect, which you've already done that, haven't you?
Yes, I did. I respect to pretty much the build that SOP rather told me to do.
Okay, perfect. There's your officers, your SROs, which you got a third one of. Um, so a couple things that you can do as well to help out with the build. I want to make sure to point this out for anyone out there as well. Um, your T4 diplomacy, you can get an engineer officer from that has the pirate trait. A Nazaken is what he is.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to help increase your damage that you do. So that's going to be another way to increase your damage quite a bit right there. And then there's one of the new Delta Quadrant missions, in which you can get the hierarchy bridge officer, which has pirate with him as well.
Yeah, the potato head Doff.
Yes.
Or Roth, rather.
Yep. That's what everyone calls him, is Mr. Potato Head, because that's that's the first thing that everyone sees when they look at him. But so he's a free one that you can get, and he will help increase your damage. The diplomacy one is going to be a little bit harder of a grind because it's not like you exactly come across diplomacy duff missions everywhere you go. You see more science and other things like that. But as a tip and trick to get that filled up, and I actually had to do this, and I ran out of duty officers that can fill this assignment. Didn't have a single one. As I flew around the beta quadrant from the top to bottom, and then just kept circling back and forth, just kind of going sector by sector until I got as many as I could get. You can there's obviously some better spots where you can get that. That's just what I did. I had the time, and I had the assimilated sub-warp engines. So, obviously I can get warp 20, and I could just zoom across the screen and do that in a matter of a few minutes instead of a couple hours. So that's one way you can do with that. It's not necessarily the best way. I'm sure there's some guides out there, some good spots where you can go to get the diplomacies. Like, for example, going to some of the war zones, some of the probably the Kardashian space, I believe, has a few areas in there that you can do a lot of diplomacy stuff. Even though they're not worth using, you can grab yourself those the diplomacy ones for the turrets and the space cannon. There's space turrets that you can drop in. So that's some things that you can do on that. But overall, it's not like you have everything's completely terrible. You had 3 tacticians that you use for the Oxabat setup, so it worked quite well for you. Now is the next level of things. For those that's at home, this is the build that Spencer built. Because he's an engineer, he could get away with having a little bit more threat than anyone else, because he's got skills that can help heal him up, so he can take the damage away from some of the other captains out there and be a semi-tank type deal and still do enough damage for things. That's kind of why it's there. And then obviously he's got the batteries maxed out so that you're giving your most beneficial to the batteries. Your auxiliary is going to be high as it is without any manipulation, so you didn't need the auxiliary performance here up to 6 like a lot of other ships do. Sometimes they'll drop some other things down. They will have like those 3 points there and these 3 points here that will put this up to 6. Mm-hmm. It's kind of it's really just a mix and match of what works optimal for different types of builds. So overall, this is a good thing here. He's got the inertial dampeners. He likes using that. And then the ship here, which is a little bit slower, it helps out with the turn and everything too.
Mm-hmm.
So full caps, obviously with the leech, you want to have that maxed out. Ground, ground's one of those things that you can do almost anything you want and still be just fine. But as you see in this one here, the biggest difference is instead of having 297, he's got 300,000 here.
Yeah, all that was just 1 point out of combat armor.
Yep. So you didn't lose a whole lot overall.
No, not at all. I've checked my ground with this new build, and I'm still able to perform quite satisfactorily.
Yep. And sometimes that's all that it takes is this one little drop, and then all of a sudden you can drop those 3 points into your space, so you're a little bit more space focused, and you're still good on the ground stuff. And here he's got the specializations with the intelligence and still the pilot. Obviously, that'll take a little while to grind up. I mean, you need 11 points before you start hitting the space flanking 1. That would be my aim, is to get there as over time. You can do a bunch of experience runs. Some people have some good routes that they take where they just basically hit all the patrol missions that's nearby in the beta quadrant. They'll just go mission to mission, and they can just go through the cycle again. I would, to anyone listening that's trying to do that, and for you as well, I may not recommend that, because you might find yourself getting burnt out on the game, especially if you do it a half a dozen times or more. It's very easy, very quick to get burned out on those things.
Yeah, I was doing that before they nerfed the XP for all the patrol missions. I was basically going from one to the next to the next.
Yep. And here is the traits here, a little bit different. You got the anchored in there, fail-safe scramble, which is a great skill to have, honestly. This one's the ablative shell. You just left it in there. This blank one here would be for the point blank skill, which is a great skill for doing damage, because as you get closer to your enemy, you do a little bit more damage. He left the radiant Nanian cloud and a nanite cloud on there, which is fine. It's not going to harm anything, really. It's going to be just as well. AHOD, which is the all hands on deck. Hypocrisy, and then we got pedal to the metal. So just to be aware, so you know, pedal to the metal and anchored, if you do it right, like you're standing still for a while, and then you take off full speed, not full impulse, but full speed, you will get a couple levels of pedal to the metal and anchored at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so you kind of get those that kind of stack up a little bit, and that'll give you a damage increase of that much more. Just as a little tip and trick. Obviously, he's got some of the things that I totally agree with these space reps is what I use myself. Advanced targeting systems, enhanced armor penetration, which will increase your damage, and then the auxiliary for offense. This is one of those things when you drop it, when you can't use as effectively with an Oxabat, because you're dropping your Ox when you do your batteries every time. And then obviously the active reputations, all the space traits right there. Let's see what he's got here that's different. So there we go. Here's Agent Neural, Shield Distribution Officer. So when you use attack pattern beta, it restores your hull when firing. So obviously you should always be firing, so it'll help boost your healing when you do that. Diecroc, which is another good one to use. You'll gain shield power when using energy weapons. And let's see. And then you got
Marion.
It's supposed to be Marion, not Mario. Looking, I was like, Mario Francis Delmer? What? So
It's a me, Mario.
yeah. Hopefully we don't get dinged for that. YouTube, I love you. Anyways, so we got Marion, and which is obviously for use from the dim, which I believe you said you had, isn't it?
I don't have Marion now.
Okay, so it's one that you'll be able to get, but it's a huge grind to get.
Yeah, that's. I was looking at the prices and I was like, oh wow, 68 million as of last night.
Yep. So one thing that you can do, you got a couple different options, because it's really using it for this drain resistance. Until you get it, you could technically go with an Action Beam, which gives you like 75% drain resistance that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's an additional option that you could go with until you get this officer, because otherwise it's just giving you direct energy modulation 3, and it's a laughable skill in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
We use it in the DPS just because of the weapon power drain resistance. That's
Gotcha,
the only reason.
okay.
That's the only reason we use it for. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's got the energy to power X, which is whatever. It's cooldown reduction, because you only got a couple. In fact, I think you got only one. So that helps out with making it so that's readily available. and then you got the warp core engineer, and obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the sixth one obviously should be Direne or replacing it by your situation. If you're fighting Borg, or if you're fighting Undine, or whatever you're fighting at the time, Romulan, you can switch. There's one for each one. They're expensive. You don't necessarily have to get every single one for your situations. Just as an ideal and a thought.
Would I want to use a Zemek or Zemek or whatever? Because he's got me set up with attack pattern Omega and attack pattern Beta.
You could, but it's only going to benefit those two, so it may not be the most optimal thing to use. Honestly, I would probably recommend using more of what he's got here instead, because you're only going to be doing those two. Although it could be beneficial. I mean, it's one of those you can flip back and forth on that. I do it all the time. It's really there so that you could hit one, and in a few seconds hit the other one, and as soon as that one gets done off cooldown, you can go back and hit the other one instead of having a long cooldown on a couple of them. So that's the biggest benefit of using. That's why a lot of people do it, so they can go back and forth between the two skills.
Okay.
So I think this is the same notes that you had there before, so that's not a problem. These links here that's in this video here will be included in here, and I think you got them already. So, but is there any? So, have you had a chance to do a run since the changes that you've done?
Yeah. So I went with the changes that SOB suggested, and at least the ones that I could do, and I fitted in what I could do where it did match up. And I was still running Aux to Bat at the time, but instead of going with dual beam banks, I went with just regular anti-proton crit DX3 plus something else beam arrays, just rejects that I'd gotten from trying to get crit DX4 or crit X3 plus pen.
Yep.
And I actually ended up doing over 35k.
Just by doing that alone?
Changing my skills, changing a couple of my traits around, and changing over to beam arrays, because I was able to change my piloting style when I switched over to beam arrays. I was able to basically just go at full throttle all the time, and still keep things in my firing arc. So I was able to constantly have 10 stacks of pedal to the metal.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, until you get anchored and such, it's one of those things. You're just as well flying off around and doing the damage especially until you get the space flanking. It's the space flanking that becomes critical to trying to stay out in front of the transformers and the generators, because that's where their flanking side is, which doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's kind of odd.
Yeah, it's one of those things I looked at it and it says, what? Because it doesn't make sense at all. I mean, why would something on the front, what would be our perspective of the front, be a flanking side? But it could be that they're not doing anything, so you can catch them off guard at any angle because it's not like they're shooting back at you.
My one thing that I was kind of curious about is I've still got the bioneural gel pack instead of the hydrodynamic compensator or whatever it is.
Yep.
Since I'm not using the turret, is there something better I could be using in place of the hydrodynamic compensator and the bioneural gel pack?
Yes, there is actually. There's a console that I like using a lot of. This is one thing I like to do, which is the RCS conducive. It's an engineering-based item. Where's it at here? The conducive RCS accelerator. You get this thing up to epic level. You get 50% turn rate on your ship.
Wow.
Okay. So that's a huge boost right there.
Yeah.
And then you get it with the EPS stat on it. And that EPS will help with your energy transfer from, like, when you go full impulse, it'll help move things around faster than your energy. So that your weapons, when you when the power is being transferred, is transferring faster back to weapons. Okay,
Nice.
which means more DPS in the end, and it helps keep them up and level it out as well. So that's a couple of things that it does. So it does a few different things that helps out. It's one of the consoles that I like to use. The other one that I like to use with that particular mod is the part gen, but that's on my special fun runs, as I call them, where I basically deck out a tall warship to do a Thalaron pulse with a Skiddo turret set up on it. It's totally just, like I said, it's a fun run setup. It's all it's there for.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll use a part gen on that instead because of the fact that I'm trying to boost the Thalaron pulse up to max.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as that's what I would use is this conducive RCS accelerator, because it gives you a little bit more turn, especially when you're not using the turret to go along with it anymore. So you can drop that and get one of these instead. I actually have a Mark 12. It's just a very rare, so it doesn't have the mod on it.
Mm-hmm.
That I can give you for a temp item until you get one yourself.
Oh, I can craft those.
Yeah, you can craft them either way. I mean, it took me a little while to craft mine before I got the EPS in mine. I will give you that warning.
Now, can you still get the science mods on those as well when you craft them, or did they take that away?
What science mods are you looking for?
Well, I was thinking if you could still get flow caps on that one, would that be better than EPS?
I don't know if that's still available, to be honest. I haven't looked. It might be available. I know there's like a Resol, which is the Resistol mod, which it can work quite well, but I would rather sell it because it's worth about 60 million on the exchange.
Wow. Okay.
And it does sell. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will point that out every time. I try and craft those as much as I can and try and aim for that particular mod because it is one of the best selling items. I mean, I sold that within a couple hours.
Wow.
So, but that is another mod that's out there that's available. But that's more of a PvP type thing, I would say, for those who's trying to get high resistance going on with their ships.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessary for your case. If there is a flow cap, I would look into it, and it might be an option that you can do.
Okay.
And not necessarily one of the best options, but it's you could with it you might be able to get yourself with 3 power per proc on the leech, which is huge. I mean, that's 24 that it gives to every single power, and so you can literally take your shield and engines right down to near about 24, 23, or not 23, 24, 54 to 53 area on the power, and drop the rest into aux and weapons, and you'll be doing a lot more damage because you got more auxiliary for your new card trait. So, few different options. I mean, you can do any number of things like that. They all will work pretty well in any case.
Cool.
So, any other questions that you have?
Since chemosite weaponry, laced weaponry is kind of an expensive one to pick up right now. Can't really afford that. What would you recommend as the in place of that for the time being as the third ensign tactical ability?
So if you're going to keep the 2 attack patterns, I would personally make that a Beamfire at World 1. Okay. I always try and keep at least 2 of those in there going on because of the factor that it simply helps them out with having one going on almost constantly. So that's what I would do personally on that, because it would be a lot more beneficial in that way, an aspect of things. So, if you got inspirational leader, You could also do like a torpedo high yield or spread, as both of those will not affect the rest of your skills, but yet give you a chance for the inspirational leader to proc. You can even drop one of the TAC teams to do that with, and still you go with a second beam fire at will. So that's a couple different options that you have. That's one of the biggest reasons an inspirational leader, a lot of people try and do as much to proc it, even using offbeat things that the build never uses, is because of what it does. It gives you a little bit of power in almost everything. A little bit points in everything, I should say, not power. It's points. So, like your weapon proficiency may go up because of the inspirational leader.
Right. Right.
So that's why, like in my build, if you look at my scimitar, you'll see cannon spread volley and torpedo, either high yield or torpedo spread, depending on the time of day that I have. And it's because of the factor that they proc inspirational leader. The cannon spread volley also procs the supremacy skill. So that's another one that I haven't used. That's a very good one to use. So that's some of those things that I do there, and that's one of the reasons what I do. I pick something different, something a little off. Tag team is a great thing to use. It's also great to alternate back and forth. You can stack that with your fire at will so that you get the extra little damage that the tactical team will give you. That's why it's in there. It's not necessary for it to transfer your weapons to that side you're getting hit on the most. It's there to help boost the accuracy and the damage that your weapons do. So, but overall, I mean, it looks like a good setup here. It should do quite well in that 35K already. You're seeing huge difference already in that alone. You get this little tweaked up a little bit better. I will make a Avenger ship that's more of a in-game type gold, where everything's gold and yellow and fancy. It's just slightly different than what Spencer has used, but I'll keep the skills the same at least, so you don't have to reskill again.
I got plenty of reskill. I've still got 7 reskill tokens from leveling up. So,
I mean, it's up to you. I mean, the options are there. I mean, I got, if you looked at any of my builds that I have, there's a few different ideals that you can see from some of those. So, but I'll make one and I'll include it in the list, and I'll send it off to you as well.
Cool, thank you. Only other question would be, I remember for a while people were talking about, use transfer shield strength 2 and hazard emitters 1. I see that Spencer had me go to science team 1 and hazard emitters 2. Is that because of all the stuff that the heralds are throwing out?
Yeah, hazard emitters will cancel out a lot of the stuff. You'll see both of us in our ISA runs. What we use instead is actually a Tychon's Rift for this, and then hazard emitter 1. The Tychon's Rift helps drop the shields in the tactical cube, so you get to the less resistance haul faster.
Nice.
So that's one of the reasons why we use that ourselves. But it's one of those things that you can do almost anything with that Lieutenant Science spot and still do fairly well, to be honest.
Okay.
But my preference is actually using Hazard Emitter 1 and Tychon's Rift. I've used it in every single situation, in fact. So.
Good to know. Good to know.
Anything else?
No, I think that'll do it for now. Thank you very much for all your help.
Not a problem. Glad we can help you out, and I'm glad to hear that you're already doing some improvements on the build compared to what you did before.
Yeah, it definitely helped me meet my initial goal, which was to get over 30K.
Yep, and you might be able, if you got the right group and you push things even further, you might be able to even hit into the 50K range.
Nice.
So that'd be something you can aim for. I think you can get it. You'll have to be doing a couple of tweaks here and there, but I think you are well within the ability to hit that range of things.
Awesome. Thank you.
So if there's nothing else, and then we'll call that the end. Thank you everyone for joining us on the Pilot Review Show. I'm glad you were able to come and join us. We'll be on again Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 GMT. 1 a.m. GMT, I should say. Thank you and have a wonderful day.